What's up, everybody? This is another episode. Ruben here. I'm going to jump right into it. I'm going to talk about sports today. Let's talk about Dak Prescott and this franchise tag extension that he just signed, right? So, when we look at Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys, right, one of the things that kind of strikes me that's interesting when you look at the dynamics of what's going on with this deal that he currently has, right? So, he re-signed, or basically he got assigned the franchise tag for $31.4 million. And so the franchise has the right to do this. Next year, if they re-sign him without a contract for a franchise tag, they have to bump up the pay 20%, which puts it up to over $37 million a year, right? Chances are he's not going to get the next franchise tag, right? It seems highly unlikely, okay? And so one of the things that I see is, when we talk about contracts and how they get paid their money and so forth and so on. Now, is Dak Prescott worth it, right? Is he deserving of this title of one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the NFL? He's a young guy. He's accomplished to a certain extent. Now, he hasn't won a Super Bowl, right? He's not a Super Bowl winning level quarterback. So let's look at this, right? Let's look at how much money he's actually making. So in the NFL, the average tenure is less than 3 years, right? Like 2.8 years or some crazy number, 3.2 years, whatever it is. He's already passed that, right? So his first 4-year deal was for $2.7 million. Now, that's not per year, that's total. His contract was $2.7 million, right? So did Dallas already get a deal with this guy? He did. Now, it didn't get him a Super Bowl. It didn't get him where they wanted to be. But if he's in these 4 years, he's proved that he can be the face of $1 billion corporation, then yeah, he's deserving of a big contract. Now, if Dallas signs this guy for this giant contract that's coming up, because of all the stuff that happened with COVID, the salary cap is going to be at this weird number because it's based off of revenue generated, right? That's kind of like what the NFL, how they dole out their money. It's a percentage based off of total revenue. So if there's going to be a giant hit, if people are just not going to be allowed in the stadiums, the whole thing about if you pay this guy $38 million a year, it's going to almost guarantee, if he becomes the highest paid quarterback, it's going to guarantee that the Cowboys will probably not even make the playoffs because they're going to essentially have to gut the whole team. So his contract is guaranteed for this year coming up, and they have up until July 15th to secure a long-term deal, which if you look at it, from everybody's kind of, angle, right? So let's look at pro Cowboy angle. The pro Cowboy angle is you want to leverage the COVID situation to try to entice him to take less money. So if Dak's people recognize this, then they're going to be like, okay, yeah, I'll take a little bit less money now, but you're going to have to backload and guaranteed, right? So essentially the NFL, they're infamous for offering you a big contract, but you don't ever collect all that money. It's like a big carrot, but like something gets hurt and you can get released and they can prorate some of your contract, but essentially you don't get all the money with that. So that being said, there's a couple ways. So pro Cowboys, you try to re-sign them to a long-term deal. You leverage the whole COVID thing where it's going to be a disaster for salary cap next year. But if you really look at the situation here, the angle for the Cowboys is you want to secure this guy for 4 to 5 years, right? You want to get him at the lowest amount possible, right? Now, you already got him for $2.7 million for 4 years, and he outperformed that contract, right? Dak Prescott overperformed it, right? He exceeded expectations to the point where he basically drove Tony Romo out, right? Tony Romo was the guy, but Dak Prescott said, here I am, I can do this, right? So he proved that he can do it. He's 26 years old. His is going into his 5th year in the NFL. He's going to be an unrestricted free agent if he doesn't sign by July 15th, a long-term deal. And if he doesn't sign, they have to wait to the end of the year to get him to get another contract, for him to sign either another franchise tag, which pays him $37 million, or they get him on a long-term deal. So for the Cowboys side of it, you want to try to get him before the 15th deadline, because this year we don't know what the year is going to be, right? The draft was all over the place, even though people think they made, the less information and data you have to make the decisions to draft these players. So the draft, I don't think there's going to be some still people that are going to be successful, but I think they're going to come from places that we don't expect. I guess that's what I'm trying to get to. So from the Cowboys standpoint, is they're going to weather the storm like every other team is going to weather the storm. It's not just the Cowboys that are going to suffer. It's everybody that's going to get impacted by the COVID situation, right? If there's going to be no people in the stands, revenue sharing is going to drop dramatically, which means the salary cap is going to drop dramatically, which means all these giant contracts, they're going to get bought out and they're going to get released, right? So is that going to make Dak Prescott bitter? Possibly could, and him want to go somewhere else. Now so if the Cowboys can do this, they can get him on a long-term deal, not guarantee him a bunch of money, and have an early buyout. So they can lower the contract at the beginning, have a lower number at the next couple of years, and then ramp it up at the end, and then just buy him out and release him, right? If he doesn't produce, if they don't get a Super Bowl, right? Because the more you pay a quarterback, the harder it is to build the rest of the team. And there are 53 other players that are on a team. It takes a lot of effort. Usually, you look at Russell Wilson, he wasn't making a bunch of money when they won a Super Bowl. A lot of young quarterbacks that don't have these giant bloated contracts, you can now build a team. So Dak Prescott, these last 2 years were his opportunity, right? It was his opportunity for him to win a Super Bowl. They tried to do it. It just couldn't happen. Patrick Mahomes, if you look at what he's able to do, he is in a position to get a giant contract. That could almost pretty much solidify that maybe he's not going to win anymore, right? Now, you look at what has happened in the NFL for people to continuously win Super Bowls is you look at what you saw in New England. Now, Tom Brady never made tons and tons of money. He only made tons of money for a couple select years. But for the most part of his career, he was underpaid. And that's how the New England Patriots were able to build 6 championship teams around him, right? He's a very capable quarterback, but they were able to spend money in different ways. And it's hard to be disciplined that way, because when you have a franchise level quarterback, because Tom Brady's personality was allowing of this, they were able to escape with not having to pay all that money. So if you look at Dak Prescott's leverage point, so for him, now let's look, we talked about the Cowboys side. Now let's look at Dak Prescott's side, right? So he signs this $31 million contract. You say that's a ton of money. If you add that to his first contract, was $2.7 million, and you average it out through the 5 years, let's assume he plays his 5th year. If you average it out through the 5 years, he's averaging $6.8 million in his first 5 years. And you say to yourself, Ruben, that's not a lot of money. That's right. And that's why this $31 million number seems so outrageous, but in reality, it's not. It's what they do. These rookie contracts are so low that you now have an opportunity to build a team around a solid rookie or first or second or third or fourth year quarterback that you can build a Super Bowl winning team. Russell Wilson, Patrick Mahomes, and the Chiefs, the list goes on and on and on, right? And so from his standpoint, is he going to, I think for his leverage aspect of it, it's in his best interest to sign a long-term deal before July 15th so you can get that behind you. For him, obviously, I would take a lower dollar amount for guaranteed money, right? So to get $35 million a year, but it's incentive heavy, that doesn't really do well for you, because injuries are a real thing in the NFL, right? It's a real thing in there. A lot of people suffer injuries. They don't get paid all the money that they were promised, and it just never happens, right? They get released early. But if you guarantee, say, $20 million a year, right? Guarantee $20 million a year, then he can get a commitment from the team. So if you signed a 6-year, $20 million a year, if you win a Super Bowl, there's a $10 million bonus in there. You can do that, right? And so that could be a $120 million contract. You're going to be there for a long time. You can have stability. You can build your personal brand. See, that's one thing that these players need to realize, that as a quarterback, you can build your fan base with consistency. If you stay somewhere for a lot of years, you can build your brand. Tony Romo did that in Dallas. He didn't go anywhere else. He just retired and became a broadcaster. But the consistency of knowing who you are, of fans knowing who you are. Now, the Dallas Cowboys, it's a very advantageous position for Dak Prescott because he was a relatively unknown rookie. He's now in the forefront of everybody's thoughts. He's going to have this giant payday. It would benefit him to have a long-term deal. If he signs a 6-year deal after this 5 years he's been in there, that's 11, 12 years in the NFL. He's going to be a household name moving forward. He can parlay that into many other things. The Dallas Cowboys are one of the most public, or one of the most, they're really out there, right? So that's going to help him. Dak Prescott should definitely sign with the Dallas Cowboys. Where else is he going to go? He can get the notoriety. He can get the fame. He can get a broadcaster job, and everybody says, well, that's a dumb thing to think about. You got to think about your future, right? Tony Romo is now making just as much as he was making in the NFL broadcasting in the booth. Dak Prescott could possibly be the same thing. There's nothing that says he can't do that. And there's more and more networks that cover sports. You have ESPN, ABC, NBC. You have all these networks that cover this. He can do a podcast, a highly paid podcast. Spotify, YouTube, all these things are coming up. And he can parlay his notoriety and consistency of being with one team and having a loyal fan base. See, that loyal fan base is who's going to buy your merch, who's going to subscribe to your podcast, who's going to put you in the driver's seat for your future. Because if he's 26 and he plays for another 10 years, that's 36. He's got another 15 to 20 years that he can be in the professional spotlight, either commentate or become, part of the NFL culture, right? That's what a lot of these guys are doing. A la Shannon Sharp, Tony Romo, Troy Aikman. He has that pedigree, right? He can put himself in that driver's spot for that. So I think it's very important that he think about that kind of stuff. And I think that if he signs a long-term deal that has more guarantees and maybe less per year, I think he's going to be really successful, because if he can eke out a Super Bowl, then he can cement his name for future endeavors, right? He can put himself in that driver's seat, right? And so I think he should really contemplate that and really think about that. So I think for Dak Prescott, the benefit is to sign early and sign now, get that out of the way, put themselves in the driver's seat, because if they can be in Super Bowl contention every single year, then there's something to be said about that, right? There's a lot of fame and notoriety that goes a long way when you get to your second career in the NFL. And Dak Prescott seems like he could be that guy. So I'd like to see him sign. He's going to make his $31.4 million. It aggregated basically his rookie contract, which was basically like $400,000 a year. It helped that average out, but I think long-term, they should work on a deal before July 15th. Get that out of the way. This year, he could win a Super Bowl. If he doesn't sign by the end, if he signs at the end of this year, if he doesn't sign by July 15th, think about this, okay? If they win a Super Bowl this year, Dak Prescott's not going to get re-signed by the Dallas Cowboys, because then he's going to garner that $38 million a year. He kind of put the Cowboys in a catch-22. His agent's going to be like, he's a Super Bowl winning quarterback. Now you need to pay him all this money. Dallas is simply not going to do that. They're just going to draft. They're going to say, thank you for winning the Super Bowl, and they're going to let him go on his way. Then he's going to bounce around in the NFL. That can change everything, right? So for Dak's benefit, he should sign a contract, get it out the way. Anything's going to be possible this year. However football is going to get played, if it only gets played in certain places. So I like to see that. I like to see that behind him, so he can move forward and work on winning a Super Bowl this year, because anything is possible. This year is going to be a toss-up. For everybody to say that this team's going to win, that team's going to win, there's going to be a lot of shenanigans that are going on with all the stuff that's happening right now, right? Basketball is going to be coming back in about a month. Baseball's still up in the air. There's a bunch of stuff is fluid. How are teams going to react when there's nobody in the stands? All that's to be said, right? All that's to be seen still, but I think that there's going to be a lot of ups and downs with this season. There's going to be a lot of stuff surfaced that we never expected. Anyways, thank you guys for listening and watching and all that stuff. This is going to be thank you for watching this video. This is going to be on YouTube, Facebook, and the Ghetto Eagle Podcast. I'll be posting it as soon as I get it processed. Thanks for watching. Bye.